A divan was a high governmental body in a number of Islamic states, or its chief official. Etymology. The word, recorded in English since 1586, meaning Oriental Council of a State, from Turkish divan, from Arabic divan. It is first attested in Middle Persian spelled as dpywn and dywn, itself harkening back via Old Persian, Elamite and Akkadian, ultimately to Sumerian dub clay tablet. The word was borrowed into Armenian as well as divan. On linguistic grounds this is placed after the 3rd century, which helps establish the original Middle Persian form was divan, not Devon, despite later legends that traced the origin of the word to the latter form. The variant pronunciation Devon, however, did exist, and is the form surviving to this day in Tajiki Persian. In Arabic, the term was first used for the army registers, then generalized to any register, and by metonymy applied to specific government departments. The sense of the word evolved to custom house and council chamber, then to long, cushioned seat, such as are found along the walls in Middle Eastern council chambers. The latter is the sense that entered European languages as divan. The modern French, Spanish, and Italian words diwan, aduana, and dogarana, respectively, also come from divan. Creation and development under the early Caliphates. Establishment and Umayyad period. The first divan was created under Caliph Umar in 15 AH, or more likely 20 AH. It comprised the names of the warriors of Medina who participated in the Muslim conquests and the families, and was intended to facilitate the payment of salary to them, according to the service and the relationship to Muhammad. This first army register was soon emulated in other provincial capitals like Basra, Kufa and Fustat. With the advent of the Umayyad Caliphate, the number of diwans increased. To the Divan al-Jand, the first Umayyad Caliph, Muawiyah, added the Bureau of the Land Tax in Damascus, which became the main divan, as well as the Bureau of Correspondence, which drafted the Caliph's letters and official documents, and a Bureau of the Seal, which checked and kept copies of all correspondence before sealing and dispatching it. A number of more specialist departments were also established, probably by Muawiyah. The Divan al-Barad in charge of the postal service, the Bureau of Expenditure, which most likely indicates the survival of a Byzantine institution. The Divan al-Sadaqa was a new foundation with the task of estimating the zakat and USHR levies. The Divan al-Musta'ghalar administered state property in cities. The Divan al-Taraz controlled the government workshops, the GMA, official banners, costumes and some furniture. Aside from the central government, there was a local branch of the Divan al-Karaj, the Divan al-Jand and the Divan al-Razaril in every province. Under Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, the practices of the various departments were standardized and Arabized. Instead of the local languages and the traditional practices of bookkeeping, seals and timekeeping, only Arabic and the Islamic calendar were to be used henceforth. The process of Arabization was gradual. Iraq was the first in 697, followed by Syria in 700, Egypt in 705, and finally Khorasan in 742. Abbasid period. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, the administration, partly under the increasing influence of Iranian culture, became more and more elaborate and complex. As part of this process, the diwans increased in number and sophistication, reaching their apogee in the 9th–10th centuries. At the same time, the office of vizier was also created to coordinate government. The administrative history of the Abbasid diwan diwans is complex, since many were short-lived, temporary establishments for specific needs, while at times the sections of larger divan might also be termed diwans, and often a single individual was placed in charge of more than one department. Caliph al-Safar established a department for the confiscated properties of the Umayyads after his victory in the Abbasid Revolution. This was probably the antecedent of the later Divan al-Diya, administering the caliph's personal domains. Similarly, under al-Mansur there was a bureau of confiscations, as well as a Divan al-Asham, probably in charge of palace service personnel, and a bureau of petitions to the caliph. Caliph al-Mahdi created a parallel Divan al-Zimam for every one of the existing diwans, as well as a central control bureau. These acted as controllers as well as coordinators between the various bureaus, or between individual diwans and the vizier. In addition, a Divan al-Mazlim was created, staffed by judges, to hear complaints against government officials. The remit of the Divan al-Khiraj now included all land taxes, while another department, the Divan al-Sadaqah, dealt with assessing the zakat of cattle. The correspondence of the Divan al-Khiraj was checked by another department, the Divan al-Khatam. As in Umayyad times, miniature copies of the Divan al-Khiraj, the Divan al-Jind and the Divan al-Raza'il existed in every province, but by the mid-9th century each province also maintained a branch of its Divan al-Khiraj in the capital. The Treasury Department kept the records of revenue and expenditure, both in money and in kind, with specialized diwans for each category of the latter. Its secretary had to mark all orders of payment to make them valid, and it drew up monthly and yearly balance sheets. The Divan al-Jabaha, responsible for the treasury's balance sheets, was eventually branched off from it, while the treasury domains were placed under the Divan al-Diya, of which there appear at times to have been several. In addition, a department of confiscated property and confiscated estates existed. Caliph al-Mu'tadid grouped the branches of the provincial diwans present in the capital into a new department, the Divan al-Dar, Divan al-Dar al-Kabir, where al-Dar probably meant the vizier's palace. At the same time, the various Imam Bureau were combined into a single Divan al-Zimam, which rechecked all assessments, payments and receipts against its own records, and, according to the 11th century scholar al-Mawardi, was the guardian of the rights of Bayt al-Mal and the people. The Divan al-Nafakat played a similar role with regards to expenses by the individual diwans, but by the end of the 9th century its role was mostly restricted to the finances of the caliphal palace. Under al-Muqtafi, the Divan al-Dar was broken up into three departments: the Bureau of the Eastern Provinces, of the Western Provinces, and of the Iraq, although under al-Muqtadir the Divan al-Dar still existed, with the three territorial departments considered sections of the latter. In 913 quarters, the Vizier Ali ibn Isa established a new department for charitable endowments, whose revenue went to the upkeep of holy places, the two holy cities of Mecca and Medina, and on volunteers fighting in the Holy War against the Byzantine Empire. Under Caliph al-Mutawakkil, a bureau of servants and pages, possibly an evolution of the Divan al-Asham, existed for the huge number of slaves and other attendants of the palace. In addition, the Divan al-Khatam, now also known as the Divan al-Sir, grew in importance. Miskawayh also mentions the existence of a Divan al-Haram, which supervised the women's quarters of the palace. Later Islamic dynasties. As the Abbasid Caliphate began to fragment in the 9th century, its administrative machinery was copied by the emergent successor dynasties, with the already extant local divan branches likely providing the base on which the new administrations were formed. Tahirids, Saffarids, Buyids and Samanids. The administrative machinery of the autonomous Tahirid dynasty of Khorasan is almost almost unknown, except that the treasury was located in the capital of Nishapur. Yaqub al-Safat, the founder of the Safarid dynasty who supplanted the Tahirids, is known to have had a bureau of the army for keeping the lists and supervising the payment of the troops at his capital Zarang. Under his successor Amr ibn al-Layth there were two further treasuries, the Mali Kassa, and an unnamed bureau under the chief secretary corresponding to a chancery. The Buyids, who took over Baghdad and the remains of the Abbasid Caliphate in 946, drew partly on the established Abbasid practice, but was adapted to suit the nature of the rather decentralized Buyid Confederation of Autonomous Emirates. The Buyid bureaucracy was headed by three great departments: the Divan al-Wazir, charged with finances, the Divan al-Raza'il as the state chancery, and the Divan al-Jaysh for the army. The Buyid regime was a military regime, its ruling caste composed of Turkish and Elamite troops. As a result, the army department was of particular importance, and its head, the Arid al-Jaysh, is frequently mentioned in the sources of the period. Indeed, at the turn of the 11th century, there were two Arids, one for the Turks and one for the Elamites. Hence the department was often called Department of the Two Armies. A number of junior departments, like the Divan al-Zimam, the Divan al-Diya, or the Divan al-Barid, were directly inherited from the Abbasid government. Under Adad al-Dawla, however, the Divan al-Sawad, which oversaw the rich lands of Lower Iraq, was moved from Baghdad to Shiraz. In addition, a Divan al-Khilafah was established to oversee the affairs of the Abbasid caliphs, who continued to reside in Baghdad as puppets of the Buyid emirs. Seljuks. The great Seljuks tended to cherish the nomadic origins, with their sultans leading a peripatetic court to the various capitals. Coupled with the frequent absence on campaign, the vizier assumed an even greater prominence, concentrating the direction of civil, military and religious affairs in his own bureau, the Supreme Divan. The Divan al-Ala was further subdivided into a chancery under the Tufari Munshi al-Mamalik, an accounting department under the Mustafi al-Mamalik, a fiscal oversight office under the Mushrif al-Mamalik, and the army department under the Arid. A number of lesser departments is also attested, although they may not have existed at the same time. The office charged with the redress of grievances, the state treasury and the sultan's private treasury, confiscations, the land tax office and the department of religious endowments. A postal department also existed but fell into disuse. The system was apparently partly copied in provincial centers as well. Government councils. The Divan-i-Humayun, a sublime port, was for many years the council of ministers of the Ottoman Empire. It consisted of the Grand Vizier, who presided, and the other viziers, the Kadiaskas, the Nisanchi, and the Deftadars. The assemblies of the Danubian principalities under Ottoman rule were also called Divan. In Javanese and related languages, the cognate diwan is the standard word for chamber, as in the Diwan Perwakilan Rakyat, a chamber of people's representatives. Ministerial departments. In the Sultanate of Morocco, several portfolio ministries had a title based on Divan: Divan al-Alaf, Ministry of War; Divan al-Bahr, Ministry of the Sea, i.e., Foreign Ministry; Divan al-Shikayat, Ministry of Complaints;